I actually think quantity surveying is one of the best foundations you can get to further yourself, just because you understand every element, but specifically the commercial side. And that's why I think there's a lot of pitfall in our industry, is the commercial side of things.
There are obviously main contractors out there that they base their delivery criteria on cost. Who is the cheapest subcontractor?
That's such a stupid model, in my opinion.
That's where I sense it can go wrong in bigger main contracting businesses. When you get into that cost mentality, not value mentality, if you don't know what you need to price a job at, it's a ticking time bomb. We specialise in the later living sector. When you get into the realms of the size of projects that we deliver, you have to specialise in a sector. Every new project that you do in that space, you effectively de-risk it a little bit more. Blindly pricing work is a complete waste of time. Make sure you build relationships with people. Make sure you've at least got a chance of winning work. Understanding your commercials is a big one for us. Just do what you say you're going to do. I'm really careful about how I say it on LinkedIn, because non-payment's a massive issue. It can destroy businesses. Yeah, I just sort of committed to posting once a week.
So what was the idea behind this?
It was to drive traffic to Kori.
People who do want to do business with Kori, more than likely they're going to want to buy into you as a person, as the MD first, and then they'll start transacting with Kori. What do you think of the phrase subby basher when it comes to QS?
What I would say to subbies is, to give one bit of advice, it's like...
Jordan, welcome to SQFT-Stories.
Thank you for having me.
How do you pronounce your second name, by the way? Is it
Connachie.
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 It's a good job I asked, because I was going to say Connachie.
Nobody has ever pronounced my second name correctly. So,
the thing is, I've now started like at least 4 podcasts with asking the guest how to pronounce their second name, so I should probably ask before.
I usually get, were you going to say Connachie?
No, I was going to say Connachie.
Connachie, that's new. I haven't had that one before. Usually get Connachie, usually get Connachie.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely get Connachie.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I'm glad I asked.
Jordan Connachie.
I'm glad I asked then.
Yeah.
Loads I want to dive into today.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on as well. I've been trying to get you on for a long time.
You have. Yeah.
And then you kindly sent me a message saying that I'm able to break your podcast virginity, if that's the thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think we spoke about this. I was sort of struggling for content on LinkedIn, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to get some interesting sound bites.
Hopefully so, mate. Hopefully so. So, mate, obviously loads I want to dive into, but do you want to give us an idea of what you were like pre-Kori and what you were up to those sorts of times?
Yeah, so in terms of my career?
Yeah, just in terms of your career and personal life, if you want to dive into it.
Yeah, so I joined a business actually in the consultancy space. So when I was 18, so they were on project management, EA, QS consultancy. I joined that. I joined that business as a trainee QS, and they put me through my degree apprenticeship. So it's a company called Goodrich Consulting, who were based in Northampton. Interestingly, I interviewed for that job against 2 people from my school, one of which is one of my business partners and the commercial director at Kori now. So he actually went to uni full time, had a job in the city, worked for a couple of different companies, and then I managed to sort of snare him into Kori.
Join
4 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I joined the business in Northampton. Worked there for 8 years. Did my degree apprenticeship, which is something we can touch on if you want to. I thought, I'm like big advocate of degree apprenticeships.
Interesting. Do you know what? Let's talk about that, because I've had some people on here who are the opposite. They're not an advocate of like degree apprenticeships and just sometimes a traditional route of education. So yeah, tell us your experience and why you're an advocate of it. Yeah,
well, you get yourself into significant debt now going to university.
Yeah.
And I learned 95% of what I knew, and 95% of my learning in that period come from me being in an office and being at work. And you got elements of learning from the degree, but the bulk of my learning come from the people around me and the business that I was in. And if I had went to university full time, I would have spent 4 years there, and I wouldn't have been much further ahead than I was the first day I started at Goodrich, if I'm being honest. Yeah. And me and Kyle often speak about this. Kyle's my commercial director who just mentioned. He went to university full time, and he was like, I come into an industry and I knew bits about it, but there was never any context. He'd done lots of theory, but never applied that theory in the environment or in the sector. So I just think it gives you a massive foot forward. And employers are paying for your degree effectively.
Yeah, so it makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, back then, I think like I was like one of the last. I was like one of the last cohorts where it was £3,000 a year, for your degree effectively, and then it went up to £9,000 a year. I mean, like students are coming out with like 50k worth of debt now, and we've ran, how many degree apprentices have we had through the business now? 3 or 4, and it's all paid for them.
Yeah, makes sense from that perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you did 8 years, did you say 8, 9 years?
I did 8 years within the business, 8 or 9 years within the business. 5 years was my degree apprenticeship.
Yeah. And was that in quantity surveying?
Quantity surveying, yeah.
One of them,
on
the dark side.
Which we'll get into still a QS at heart. I'm very like commercially biased. Like I think like my personality suited being a QS really well. I didn't actually know what I wanted to do, and everyone in my school at the time was going to university. That's just what you did. But I know this is probably the first time that I realised I was a true QS. I just thought, why am I paying for a degree when I don't know what I want to do or what I'm going to get out of it? And then an opportunity presented itself at Goodrich. I think they actually contacted our school. They contacted quite a few local schools. It was sort of part on site, part practical, part in the office, numbers based. Got my degree paid for me. It sort of like ticked every box.
Makes sense, doesn't it? I actually think I never trained in anything, to be honest with you.
Right.
Like I did, apart from I did carpentry, but years ago. But I've sort of been a learner on the job type thing.
Yeah.
I actually think quantity surveying is one of the best foundations you can get to further yourself in our career, just because you understand every element, but specifically the commercial side. And that's why I think there's a lot of pitfall in our industry is the commercial side of things.
Yes.
It really is.
I think we see sort of talking about sort of LinkedIn. I sort of spend quite a bit of time on LinkedIn and actually not just LinkedIn. Businesses, subcontract businesses that we've dealt with. It's a weak area for the industry, and it's one of the areas where our business is very strong. Our commercial processes and our commercial function is really strong, and that just sets up a really solid foundation for a construction business, I think. So
you're right.
Look, I'm super biased because I'm a QS, but I'm pro QS.
Out of interest, what do you think of the phrase subby basher when it comes to QS? Go into as much detail as you want, and I wanted to say, the only reason I wanted to say that to you is because I'm yet to have a main contractor on here, and I'm yet to have an MD who is a trained QS as well. So I feel like you're probably very well positioned to answer that the question I've kind of asked you. But so because there's a real stigma around subby bashers who are QSs. Yeah. So like, what's your opinion on that?
Look, the construction industry is tough. And it's tough for main contractors as well. I would say it's arguably more tough for subcontractors. I look at these things through a lens of like how we run our business, and we are by no means perfect, and certainly in my QSing days and as a business, we have fallen out with people.
That's
the nature of
general,
business,
isn't it? Yeah.
And probably you can look back at some of those things and think, some of that was probably more us. In other instances, it was definitely others. But I guess you sort of see and hear a lot of things about the industry and the sector, and I guess there is a group of main contractors out there, or any contractors, I guess, that don't treat the supply chain well. It's not how we operate as a business. It's not how we try to operate as a business. I think you've always got to recognise that there is an element of commerciality, and we're working in an environment where margins are extremely thin, and that creates commercial tension. But as our business, we try and be as the supply chain are an extension of our business. We're a management company, effectively. We manage subcontracts on behalf of a client. We don't employ any direct labour. We've got one We've got one sort of defects manager who's I guess technically on the tools, so to speak. But we are a management company. We manage subcontractors. They are an extension of our business. Our delivery is only as good as our supply chain, which is why we put so much emphasis on picking the right supply chain, partnering with them, and trying our best to treat them as well as possible. I do hear stories, and everyone knows there are contractors out there that just don't look at things like that. Do I think it's reflective of the overall construction environment? No. Have I got any facts to sort of does that come from any factual basis? Probably not.
Just a short break from the episode, which I really hope you guys are enjoying. This podcast has been invaluable for me, and I hope it's providing a lot of value for yourselves. If you could just do me one small favor and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform, not only does it help me and the podcast, but it also helps share stories and insights from the industry that we find ourselves in. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. I think
what I would say to subbies is, and the subcontract supply chain, there are good main contractors out there, people that pay, people that value what you do, and your main priority should be to try and find them.
I mean, we spoke yesterday or the day before until my laptop cut out.
Yeah.
But about the element of the subcontractor bashing, but also the fact that a lot of that time is because the subbies aren't commercially driven, so they don't understand the contracts they're signing themselves up to.
Yeah.
They don't understand what they're getting themselves into, and also sometimes they haven't costed it correctly as well.
Yeah.
And they just don't have the infrastructure to deal with working with a main contractor. Yeah. So it's sad as it is, like they're almost easy prey sometimes for the main contractors.
Yeah, and we will actively move away from using subcontractors that we don't feel are geared up for dealing with main contractors, because it just ends up in a mess.
I think you have a duty of responsibility as a main contractor as well to look at subcontractors and look at their their capabilities and what they can facilitate, because you not using somebody because they don't make the remit as such and they can't facilitate the project is ultimately helping them out anyway. It doesn't seem like it at the time for them, because they just think, we haven't qualified through the PQQ or whatever you guys do.
Yep.
But ultimately, that them not qualifying through the PQQ might mean that they've saved their business in the long run.
Yeah.
So there is a duty of care from both sides as well.
There definitely is enough. There are obviously main contractors out there there are main contractors out there that base their delivery criteria on cost. It's, who is the cheapest subcontractor?
That's such a stupid model, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, we have a pool of around about 200 subcontractors in our supply chain. We have around about 40 different trades within our supply chain, and so we've got sort of two to three sort of supply chain members within each trade, and most of them have been working for our business for a long period of time. But as I said, that they are an extension of Kori, and it's pretty difficult. I mean, I get messages constantly on LinkedIn, and I try and respond to as many as I can from subbies. We just don't. It's difficult to get in with our business because we've got long-standing relationship with subcontractors, and when things go wrong on projects, it's generally when we've got a new subcontractor, and for whatever reason that relationship doesn't work, and that's not necessarily that the subcontractors, not good enough. It can just be a case that sometimes businesses don't gel, and it might be as much Kori's fault as it is the subcontractor's fault. And it's always a risk building a new relationship with a subcontractor, which is why we try and stick to our sort of trusted supply chain. And the way that tends to work is we run 10 jobs at any one time. So we sort of say to our supply chain partners, if you provide what we need, which looks like X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be, pricing support, a tender, that sort of stuff, we can sort of guarantee you 2 to 3 jobs a year, and average job value is around about this for that supply chain member. And we try and give them some surety as to what they're getting out of the relationship as well. We don't get 10 prices and pick the cheapest. That's just not what we do.
It's such a weird model. Well, I suppose it works. Commercially, it's probably works for some main contractors because they're driving, like bottom line off the back of that. So it probably works, but ultimately, long-standing relationships are never formed.
I think what I may be wrong, but what I think can happen in businesses is that is that department, particularly construction, main contracting businesses, departments end up working in silos. So the estimating department's role is to win the work at whatever cost, and then the commercial team's job is to make margin at whatever cost. Now, if the pre-construction team aren't aligned with the commercial team and they've priced the job, and as a good example, and it's something that we talk about a lot in our business. If our pre-construction team are struggling to get a price and they do have to go outside our approved supply chain, there's always a debate of why have you based that trade's price on a subcontractor we don't know, because we're not going to use them, and that might be a low price, and then that gives the commercial teams a problem because we want it to be the right subcontractor at the right price, but that means you're losing money. And then you've got a delivery team who need to deliver it on time, and if the program's not right, or you haven't got confidence in the subcontractor and they can deliver it on time, you end up with three different elements of the business just completely working in their own silos. And I think that can happen as construction businesses get a lot bigger. One of my key roles in the business is making sure that everything talks to each other and all our goals are aligned. So we're not just pricing work at any price to win it, and we're not just screwing the subbies because the price wasn't right in the first place. And I think that's where I sense it can go wrong in sort of bigger main contracting businesses. Not all of them, but when you get into that cost mentality, not value mentality, I think that's where construction businesses can come unstuck.
So give us an idea. So you worked as a surveyor as such for 8-9 years, did you say?
Yeah, I was at Goodrich for, I think it was between 8 or 9 years, client side.
Yeah. And then is that when you moved into Kori?
Yeah, that's when I moved into contracting. It was business was actually called SAC Construction then. It was, still is. Myself and my father-in-law run the business. It was my father-in-law's business. And it had been running for 6 years, I think. So we used to talk a lot about construction. Friday nights, Saturday nights, dinner. And I was obviously in a different space because I was on the client side. But sensed that there was an opportunity. They were a very small family-run business. Did a lot of work locally. And then he didn't actually speak to me. They advertised for an opportunity for a QS, and I thought, do you know what? It was the right time for me to move away. I wouldn't have moved to another consultancy business and done the same thing somewhere else. I really enjoyed Goodrich. I enjoyed all the people I worked with. It was a great business. Learned a lot there. Owe a lot to that business for sort of my future career, but it was a different opportunity, and an opportunity that I sensed, I could really add value and make something my own, which so I decided to join. It will be 10 years in June.
And I bet you've had one hell of a journey for those 10 years.
Yeah.
So tell us sort of like when you joined, like what sort of stage was that? I know you said they were doing like local projects. Yeah. And then let us know how it grew from there.
Yeah, business was around about 2-3 million turnover. It averaged sort of 2-3 million turnover for the first 6 years. They were structured more like a large builder. They'd almost hit capacity of what they could become as a building contractor. Employed a lot of direct labour. I'd say average project value was probably a couple of 100K.
We're talking extensions, loft conversions, new builds.
Didn't really do domestic work. Tried to steer away from domestic work. Did lots of work had lots of really good relationships with local private schools. So they would do extensions, dorm refurbishments. There's a couple of quite affluent private schools around where we live, so they did lots of work on them in the summer. But the work was very concentrated on certain periods of time: Easter, summer, school holidays. So I mean, every summer, the business was probably doing like 50%, 60% of its turnover in like 6-7 weeks. So we were like really good at refurb, lots of direct labour, could react to problems really quickly. But the work was very cyclical in that sense. It was challenging to manage a business outside of like summer holidays.
Yeah.
But they would do the sort of odd one-off project, like £1 million. And when we spoke a lot, myself and my father-in-law Steve, we spoke a lot about sort of the type of work that I was doing, and sort of more main contracting work, that main contractor model of subcontracting everything out, not employing direct labour. So whilst there wasn't particularly a remit when I joined as a senior QS. That was sort of the direction that we went in.
So you were sort of carrying out the business was at £2-3 million. You were doing sort of those kind of projects. So like when you moved into it, how did you kind of like operate to start with, and how did you manage to grow things?
Yeah,
as in operate yourself to start with. Are you coming in as a senior QS and then you're trying to tidy up the commercial side of things?
Yeah. So the business was extremely good at building stuff. Like we were like my father-in-law Steve. You know, he's like. They'd done everything, and they'd done it all directly, so they knew the detail of everything.
Is he like a traditional old school builder that just do everything properly?
And had been involved in. So we never subbed stuff out. So they did a large like concrete frame basement in a job in Kettering, and they did it directly. You know, ordered the formwork directly, did all the steel fixing directly. You know, it was all ran within the business and directly employed labour. So. Had like real strong fundamentals of how to deliver construction work, but the systems and processes were poor. I
if you don't mind me asking, what were the systems and processes, or was it just they weren't really existent?
From a commercial point of view, it was it wasn't. We needed to work out what our overhead was, what margins we needed to make on jobs, what a good job looked like for us, what a bad job looked like for us. I mean, in those sorts of days, it was. The goal was just work winning.
Yeah.
I just started to put sort of reporting processes in place. Monthly CVRs, cash flows, and to be fair, all this stuff was pretty new to me as well, because I was sort of sounding myself out. I actually leaned on Kyle, who was working. I can't remember where he was working at the time. He was working for a main contractor. He sort of helped me out with lots of like main contracting side documents. This is the processes we go through, just adopted them into the business. We brought in a commercial system which bolted onto Sage, which was like a construction bolt onto Sage, because Sage didn't really work very well at the time. Just got some structure around our profitability. And that's the basis for me. That's the basis of a strong construction business. You can't make decisions unless you know how much money you got. You can't make decisions unless you know how much money you're going to make.
How frequently do you see people in the industry, subbies, and also maybe main contractors as well, like lower level main contractors, how frequently do you see that they don't actually understand their overhead, or not only their overhead, how much money they need to make?
I mean, I don't see it,
hear about
if I hear about it and get a sense of it, I would say a lot more than everyone should know that. It's like it's fundamentals. Like if you don't know what you need to price a job at, like down to the nails and the screws, as a subcontractor say, and you don't know exactly what your overhead is, for me, and I'm very from a risk point of view, I'm very reserved. It's a ticking time bomb. It's all good. It's all good while you're winning work, and that cash flow's rolling in, and it looks like you got loads of money in the bank. But when things slow down and you don't know what your financial position is, you could have a problem.
Scary. The thought of that actually kind of scares me. The thought that you don't understand your numbers to a point that you don't even understand that if something was to go wrong, how that would leave you financially, and like how leveraged you are on jobs as well with certain clients and customers.
Yeah.
So like being commercially driven, and I'm sure you're an advocate for it as a QS, but being commercially driven is one of the most important things, but also one of the most underutilized sectors in our industry in terms from a subbie's perspective. That is.
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's lots of subbies out there that are great at delivering, and really understand their trade very well. But have they partnered? And those subcontractors tend to come from someone who's been on the tools. Have they partnered? Do they find the right commercial partner? And I think that's where we've done well as a business. Steve is delivery. Like he manages the delivery of our jobs. That's not what I do. That's not where my area of expertise is. My area of expertise is commercials and running the business. And you need to have the right mix of people. And I think that's what creates a successful construction business. And one of those people needs to be the commercial person.
Who wants to be the commercial guy?
Yeah.
Maybe you do.
I think finding the right mix and having that. You just got to know what you have to know your numbers. If I give one bit of advice, it's like know your numbers inside out.
So, Kori, when you joined, it was £2-3 million. You helped identify a specific project that you wanted to really specialise in commercially. You kind of neaten things up a little bit.
No, I had some I obviously had an existing relationship with the firm that I'd just left, and they worked client side as a consultant, so they tendered projects. We tendered a few school projects for them, which was aligned with what we were doing at the time, and secured a few projects. And then I had an opportunity with an existing client who I'd worked with at Goodrich, and I'd delivered a care home for, and he called me up and said, we've got a care home in Biggleswade. Are you interested in pricing it? I think at the time it was like £4 million, something like that. I sort of went into the office and I was like, look, there's this scheme. It's £4 million. It's way too big. Should we go for it? That was like that's probably one of the biggest risks we took. We actually signed a PG on that scheme because we couldn't get a bond. Steve signed a PG.
And when you say PG, just for people listening who might not know what that is,
a personal guarantee. Yeah. So
that's huge risk.
Put more than I mean, we have a flat, no PG policy. We don't need any PGs now, but we've pushed back on PGs for in our history, I guess. Yeah. When our balance sheet was in a different position, we always pushed back on PGs, but we did take that risk, and thankfully it paid off. I'd never advise anyone to do that, but given where we were in the journey, it sort of all paid off. So we delivered that care home scheme.
I bet that changed things as well, because I suppose, did that open up your guys' eyes to the fact that we actually can deliver bigger projects? Yeah,
and also we were sort of forced to become more of a main contractor. Adopt that subcontractor model, reduce our reliance on direct labour. The packages were just too big to deliver directly. Scheme went really well. And then sectors in the construction space, they're very small and everyone knows each other, and we sort of started to build a reputation for someone who could deliver. To be fair, we had a big USP at that point. We were delivering. We were cheap, because the sort of structure of the business, the overhead, the way that we were structured at the time, we could deliver schemes in a cost-effective manner, and that sort of got us a foot in the door with the next client, and then it's sort of spiraled to we are now. We are now a specialist main contractor in the later living space, and one of two that deliver at the scale we deliver at. So
how about the team at Kori? So there was you and your father-in-law right at the very start, and you've then carried out a big scheme which has kind of propelled the trajectory of you guys. But how did you grow the team alongside that?
Just organically, I think. With actually, I think we always had a vision of where the business could go. Well, you'd start to sense, like, you'd secure a £4 million scheme, and then different kind of tenders would come in, and you'd sense where the business was heading, and then you'd sort of structure where you felt you needed to be to deliver that growth. So we've always been a business that's invested in the overhead and the structure and the people before having to deliver the work. So we would just, I guess it was, it's almost like, monthly reviews of what we felt the business needed. And we're still doing that now. I think employing in areas where others maybe aren't. I can't remember when it was. She'll probably be annoyed at me, but we took Elaine on maybe 2-3 years ago, and we took Elaine on in the sustainability and communications role. So doing a lot of our she's got a heavy focus on social value, our community outreach. Spends lots of times in schools.
How important is that when you get to a certain size?
Well, when we employed Elaine, and this was the point I was going to make. Were other businesses of our size doing that? No. Did we feel like it was the right thing to do? Yes. Did we have the comfort within the profitability, the future profitability of the business, that we felt we could do it, yes, and we could make that decision because we knew where our numbers were, and it set us up for the future. I think someone actually, I don't know if you've seen my post that I put on LinkedIn today, but someone actually asked this question. They said, how important is sustainability versus profitability in a construction business? I just think it's the right thing to do. It's almost, profitability almost comes out of it. Lots of Elaine's work that she does it's just the right thing to do with a business of our size. We have an obligation, I feel, to get into schools and let people know about construction careers, help the communities that we're working in. So we've got a Kori community fund. I don't know whether you've seen it. So on each individual project, we assign £2,500, and within a 10-mile radius of that scheme, we open up basically a submission to local social enterprises or charities to basically bid for the money. So Elaine manages that, and then we have the Kori Community Fund within our hometown of Corby, where £10,000 a year, which we allocate into £5,000 bundles every 6 months. So that sort of stuff is just the right thing that profitable businesses should be doing.
Yeah, morally and socially,
view.
definitely.
Yeah. And look, it is being pushed. It is being pushed with funders and clients now, particularly the work that we're doing within London that falls under London Plan. There are stipulated social value targets, apprenticeship targets, that form part of the planning permissions of these schemes. So, and I think that will just reach out to the rest of the country, and as sort of funders sort of pick up on these things, they'll become standard industry practice. And the business has always been very much of the view that we want to get ahead of this stuff. So yeah, it's very hard to say, how much profit have we made from pushing our sustainable and social value agenda, but it's not really about that.
Yeah, it's about doing the right thing, especially like you said, when you get to a certain size, you're almost under a bit of a microscope, more so than people who are of a smaller stature as such. Something I want to talk about as well was like the construction industry it's such tight margins in the construction industry. It's very difficult to make large projects work. Yeah. And like small slip ups in the estimation and the project delivery can make massive differences to the bottom line. Like, how do you maintain profit margins? You don't have to go into any specific details, but how do you maintain profit margins in an industry that's so tight?
Yeah. I wrote an article about this actually, which I think was in Construction News. Yeah. Well, not specifically about profitability, but it was about sector specialisation. So we specialise in the later living sector, and I think when you get into the realms of the size of projects that we deliver, average project value for us now is around about £15 million. You have to specialise in a sector. There are different regulations within different sectors. You get to know the people. Our supply chain specialise in the sector.
I bet that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, because there are certain nuances with every type of building that you get to learn, and you learn all the pitfalls, and then every new project that you do in that space, you effectively de-risk it a little bit more. From a commercial point of view, we know exactly what care homes cost in the UK. We sit on like £500 million worth of live cost data at any one time. Touch wood, we're not going to price a care home project wrong. It'd be very, very...
You're very transparent with that, actually. I think I see you post sometimes about per square foot or per bed.
No, some people don't like this, that I'm sort of like telling the market like where our price data sits. Look, I'm not going to... We price a job and then we put our margin on it, and we know what we need to make. If there are other people out there that are more competitive than us, then they can have the work. And our price is always going to be our price within reason. And we are competitive in the space that we operate in. I don't really see what we're giving away by telling people roughly where we are in the market. And actually, there's a huge spread. So I posted some cost data information the other day on LinkedIn. And, there's a spread from 130k a bed to 185k a bed. And that's just it's a flavour of the stuff we've priced. It doesn't really give away any. I don't think it gives away any sort of commercial edge of where we are, and actually the benefit that I get from posting stuff like that, because I'm adding value to my network.
Yeah, true.
I've had 2 direct leads from one of the largest care operators in the UK, which we were speaking about earlier, and a retirement living provider, one of the top retirement living providers in the UK. I've had direct approaches from those businesses or people in connection with those businesses about their schemes off the back of me providing some cost data which presents some value to them. I mean, it's a massive issue in the sector at the minute. Not so much now, but construction costs rose significantly over a period of 2-3 years. It's what caught a lot of main contractors out.
They say that caught out. I think it might have caught out ISG.
Yeah, there were lots in our space.
Yeah.
Lots of contractors sort of our size as well. That priced a lot of work at the wrong time. And to be fair, but by luck, we never really got caught up in that. We had a couple of schemes that didn't do as well as we wanted them to do, but we still made a margin.
So they priced it and had to stick to the price, and then over a year or so.
We're in a fixed price D&B market. You price the job and you deliver the scheme, and there's very rarely fluctuation clauses within your contract.
So when you price the job that's fixed in the D&B scheme, like once you've estimated it and priced it, from that point, how long I know this might vary, but how long does it typically take for the project to finish? And the reason why I ask that is to understand how much time you're at risk for costs to rise. And
well, the best way to look at it is like it's how quickly can you place your orders. I guess it's not so much how long does the project take, because at what placing the order is fixing the cost, because we place fixed price orders with our subcontract supply chain, and I think this is where some people come unstuck as well. Priced work. Job didn't happen for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, maybe even 18 months. They've stuck to that price. I mean, the market moved very quickly and it moved very fast, and it was a timing issue. If you got caught up at the wrong time, you were going to get burnt. Yeah. And we were lucky that our business our care work never really kicked off until just after that. We did have some schemes. We didn't lose money on any schemes, but we did have some schemes that were a bit challenging. But yeah, on average, it's a mix. But that period of time, I think, has made main contractors, far more aware of not just saying, prices haven't gone up for 2-3 years, so it's fine. You'll always go back and review your sort of supply chain prices, and on average, like contractors are fixing their price for 12-13 weeks from submission. The key is getting an order and getting your subcontract orders placed as quickly as possible. The time span varies, but the market has, in my view, it has done for a couple of years now. It's flattened out. So we had a period of time where we were buying lots of our work for a lot more than we had in the job, which was painful. And now we're in a position where we're usually always buying our work for what we need to buy it for, or a bit better.
So that's because you understand your commercials.
Yeah, and the market has stabilised, to be fair.
Yeah, true.
The market has stabilised. There was a period of time where costs were just material costs, and it was labour costs. It was just all out of control.
Some labour costs are still out of control, to be honest with you. I mean, we get
some. Yeah, I mean, you're a bit closer to it than I am, like the actual labour cost. But
yeah, some people, what they charge, I just think it's mental that you're charging that, and they were getting away with it, not so much now. Yeah. And that just drives the cost to the clients to increase, and the clients to their clients as well to increase, and it can be a bit of a domino effect, and it's no surprise that the construction industry was a bit rocky at some point.
Yeah, we found that there was the pendulum sort of swung in our favour when the housing market died down a bit, because there's the types of subcontractors and labour that we use. In certain trades, some of our key trades, like dry lining is a good example. They'll probably work on large commercial buildings that are like houses in a sense, like apartments and care. But then they will also work on housing sites. And as that housing market died down, there was a lot more labour coming into what I'd call the commercial market. so that started driving prices down. I mean, the house builders, you know, they suck up all the supply, and then that just increases the cost, I think. So we found that it was probably about 2 or 3 years ago when the housing market sort of dipped. We were getting all sorts of peculiar calls from subcontractors that we were like, they're quite a big subcontractor, and they've been delivering some groundworks contractors are a good example. You know, they've been delivering big housing schemes. Why are they scratching around wanting to deliver a care home?
Yeah.
And actually, I think that slowdown in the housing market sort of benefited us in the commercial space.
Sure.
And that drives down labour prices. But yeah, prices have been pretty stable
Since
the past couple of years. Yeah, we found.
One thing that you briefly touched on there was the LinkedIn side of things. So you've managed to get a couple of leads off a post that you did that was more value driven for your clients. But you know, just like LinkedIn as a whole within construction is very underutilized. Personal branding is a bit of a buzzword. Yeah, I've recorded with a lady called Beatrice.
Yeah, I've seen some clips
who runs a personal branding agency. As such. She helps people. Yeah, and she communicated very, very well the importance of personal branding in the built environment. So like let me know your thought process behind personal brand and what are you trying to do with yours.
I think so. I started, when was it? Christmas before last, and it was just the only New Year's resolution that I set myself. I don't do like goals or vision boards or all that crap. I don't do any of that. I just said I want to post on LinkedIn once a week and see where it gets me.
Well, believe it or not, sorry to interrupt, but she said on the podcast that only 1% of the total LinkedIn users in the whole world, which I'm going to butcher this, but I'm pretty sure she said it was 1 billion. I might have butchered that. I don't know. So sorry if anyone's listening and going to call me out on it. But only 1% of them post once a week. Maximum once a week, and obviously as you go 2 a week it drives under 1%. Right. Okay. And then like posting every day it's like 0.0%, 0.0 something percent. Right. The man behind the camera is confirming it's a billion users. Yeah, billion users. Yeah. And so like 1% of the billion people post once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean I'm trying to do. I haven't been as good this year, but I posted once a week last year. It was just a goal that I set myself. The first post that I put on there. I'd been to the darts, and I put you've seen Ali Pally darts. You get the signs. Everyone writes on the sign, sticks it up in the air. I wrote on a sign. I can't remember exactly what I wrote now. I need a care home built, and then I put Kori Construction's website.
Did you? Yeah.
And I had some corporate seats because we got taken by a subcontractor. Very nice. Yeah. And we were right at the front where they do the sort of walk. Oh, yeah. So I got the sign right up, and it was on TV like 3 times. I took a screenshot of it, put it on LinkedIn, and then I got like 2,000 likes, 200,000 impressions on the post. Nice. Got about 1,000 followers, and that was the first post that I made. I think it was like 1st of January, 2nd of January.
You're probably thinking this stuff.
And I was like, this is easy. And that was my most successful post. I haven't managed to emulate that success. Since, but then I sort of, I imagine if I had put 2 or 3 posts out and no one had shown any interest in them, I probably would have got pissed off and I probably would have stopped. But I sort of got off to a good start, and then I just sort of committed to posting once a week.
So what was the idea behind? So obviously the idea was to grow your personal brand and also expose.
It was to drive traffic to Kori. It was never about me.
But the thing is I know you said it's never about you, but you are on LinkedIn. I'm only speaking from LinkedIn. Like I don't know anyone else from Kori apart from you because you are the man behind.
I'm the poster.
You're the poster. Yeah, you can say and like people buy into people. People can relate to people more. So like people who do want to do business with Kori, they're going more than likely they're going to want to buy into you as a person as the MD first, and then they'll start transacting with Kori.
Yeah, well, I think there's some stat that I'm probably going to misquote, but like I think individuals drive like 8 times the traffic of companies.
Right, that's exactly what
something like
that's what Beatrice said. Yeah,
8 times.
Yeah, you're right.
So whilst we were posting lots on our Kori page, we weren't getting a huge amount of engagement. And
that's because as a person, sorry to interrupt, but that's because as an individual we can't relate to a company because we're not a company. Yeah, agree. But we can relate to the person behind because we're just humans on the same level.
I think by becoming the face of the business on LinkedIn, you drive traffic to Kori. that was always the goal. I'll be honest, I actually started finding it quite fun. It was quite enjoyable. Sort of jousting with people on LinkedIn. Put my opinions out there.
I don't know what it is about it, but that is kind of enjoyable.
Yeah, that was fun.
You're very opinionative on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, people say that, like
you are. I always see your comments prop up, and it's always Jordan in the comments commenting something like I don't agree. Not saying it's negative. I'm just saying you're just sharing your viewpoint, which, to be honest with you, for the majority of the time, it's actually correct.
Yeah, well, I think people are concerned about probably saying the wrong thing, and to be fair, so am I. I don't want to upset people or say the wrong thing, but I think there's very much like, I think why my LinkedIn's been like kind of successful, I guess, like people are interested in it, is that I think there's this like illusion that like someone who runs a business, stiff, boring, sits in an office somewhere, particularly in construction businesses, not willing to share an opinion.
Very closed book industry, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just sort of go on LinkedIn and say what I think to a degree. I don't say everything I think.
But it's but it's valuable because as a significant main contractor, you guys, what are you, 60-70 million pounds?
Yeah, we'll do
revenue-wise?
68 million this year. So.
As a big contractor out there, it's nice to see the man behind the company posting stuff about the industry.
Yeah.
Because you don't see that from other tier ones.
You really don't.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't see it from. I can't think of anyone in the contractor. There's a couple of people, but I can't think of anyone really in the contracting space that's really providing their opinions. I think that's part of, it's one of the problems with the industry. I actually wrote a post about it. No one talks. So we don't, like, we've had lots of contractors around our size and bigger that have failed over the past 2-3 years, and there's always lots of like speculation and rumours and things said on LinkedIn and just generally. But you don't actually learn from those failures. You don't really understand like what went wrong there. How can the industry dissect that and benefit from it? It immediately just becomes a bit of a pile-on, which is not really of any value to anyone. And I think we'd be a better industry if we spoke.
Yeah.
And learned from, we learned from, individual failures, but there is that balance. It's also ultra competitive. So what do you and what don't you want to give away? But I've met with a couple of our competitors over the past year, and I wouldn't say they're competitors. They're sort of in different areas, but work in the care home space. Some of them do other bits, and I've always found the conversations are valuable.
Yeah, I have the same.
Yeah, and they're pretty open. The conversations are pretty open. There's also a concern amongst contractors that if people think that you're speaking to other contractors, you are automatically like labelled as colluding. But I think there's been so much widespread press with that over the years that the opposite is happening. Like, contractors do not talk, in my experience,
which is ridiculous because you can ultimately, I know you can be classed as competitors, but ultimately you can lean on each other for advice, and there's certain situations that you found your Kori in, and you've managed to dig yourself out of it, and then a competitor who you've spoke to might be in that situation. If they just picked up the phone and chatted to you about it, they might be able to get through it.
Well, we were in a position at that point where I'm not going to say any names, so I can probably say what the situation was. We were purchasing a bit of software at the time, and it was a large investment, some construction based software, and we got chatting with this main contractor, and he actually had he purchased that software like a year before, and we didn't know whether we were getting good value for money for that software, and I had no one to speak to, because what other main contractor would I speak to and say, oh, by the way, how much are you paying for this? Is this the right sort of price, or are they having me on? And I managed to get a sense of where the price should have been, and that gave me some sort of ammunition to go back. Obviously, I didn't go back to the software company and say they told me, but it gave me a sense that I was getting a good deal.
Yeah.
And just small nuggets of information like that are useful.
Yeah. Really valuable.
And you can support each other. It's not necessarily about giving away all your trade secrets.
Just to clean up the LinkedIn conversation, did you post every day for a year?
Posted every week.
Every week.
I don't post every day.
Sorry.
No way. I would not have been able to do it every day. That was way too much.
And when was that? 2-3 years ago? Did you say?
No, a year ago. So I started, and just to go back to the the point about company brand and personal brand. I always joke with Lauren in the office, who's our marketing coordination manager. I think when last year we started with Kori started with 7,000 followers and got up to 10, and I started with 1.5, and I think I ended the year at about 17,000. But you drive more traffic through a personal page. It's just the way that the way that it works. But yeah, I think it's a massively underutilized tool.
And do you post regularly still now?
I'm trying. I haven't been as good this year. I'm always throwing the odd comment out. I'm trying to post, but last year it was more of I was sort of feeling my way around what was good content and what wasn't good content. Sometimes I'd just put some sort of stupid meme out there which people found funny, but it provided zero value. And then I put a post out last year about construction care home costs. And that got 150,000 impressions, quite a lot of comments from some CEOs of care providers, real big hitters in the care space, and then that sort of it starts to guide where you feel your content should be. I need to put more content out there that provides value to my sort of follower base, but it's very time consuming, and I'm unsure about whether outsourcing my personal brand into someone else is the right thing to do, because I feel like the core of your personal brand should be you. It should be authentic, and you will lose. Whilst they tell you you won't, you will lose an element of authenticity if you're right. If you use a personal branding agency. I did speak to a personal branding agency a while back actually, but then it's that balance of I haven't got the time to do it. So but I'm a big LinkedIn fan. I mean, that's how we connected. Yeah, you pestered me for ages.
I didn't pester you. Come on, man. No, I did. I messaged you a couple of 3 times.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I respect that. You see posts on LinkedIn a lot, really arrogant posts about how people shouldn't contact cold inbox people and stuff. And I think that's literally the point of LinkedIn. Just ignore it, or I will just reply and say that's not a service I want. It's quite simple. I actually put a post about this on LinkedIn and said, I just reply and say, and then I got about 30 people comment on it. So you didn't reply to me.
You set yourself up there, mate.
I try, and it's difficult because you do get a lot of inboxes with subcontractors and various different things, and I try and reply. But people are just out there doing their job.
Are they not? So those messages you get from subcontractors, do you find sometimes that they just do it wrong in terms of they'll copy and paste an essay about their business, hi, I'm just hypothetically saying, hi Jordan.
I had one today.
I'm Callum from.
Not a LinkedIn post, but I had an email today about someone who had been actively following our business and was extremely interested in purchasing it, and they called me John, and I replied, and I was like, if you've had an active interest in my business and you've been following it with such great interest, you'd know my name.
Jordan, not Jordan. we had one recently.
You get that sort of crap, and that is just AI generated poor marketing. I've got no time for that. You've got to add a level of there's got to be a personal touch there.
There's a process to it. There's a real process to it. And again, I know I'm name dropping again. Beatrice, who I recorded with, gave that process on the podcast, of how you want to, the various different touch points with clients and how you want to do it via LinkedIn. We had one, funny enough, a similar example. We carried out a project down where we are, a D&B project, and it was our sister company did the actual shell and core, and then we fit it out internally, and we finished that last September, and we had an email from somebody saying hey, blah blah blah, been following your project, it looks like a great project, we would love to tender for the concreting of it. And I'm then literally handed over 6 months ago.
I get those emails all the time.
We don't need any more concrete,
but they're easy, aren't they? It's just to delete. There's no point responding because you can add no value. But what I would say is I'm probably going to attract about 1 million messages in my inbox now. Recently there was a one of our supply chain trades we were looking for a new supply chain member within that trade, and the first thing I did was went on my LinkedIn inbox, and I said to the guys in the office, I would have had numerous messages about this particular trade from various different companies. Just typed the trade in, had about 5 or 6 different messages, and we contacted them and said, look, there's an opportunity, this is the process. So I think people think that, well, maybe not, but if you think that you're going to send a message and get a job, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But by sort of making those initial contacts and making yourself known, kind of like yourself, about the podcast, these things over time can then generate into an opportunity, and that's how I see, whenever I make any sort of outreach to people, it's very unlikely that, I'm going to have a meeting with someone and 2 weeks later I'm building a care home. But, these things take time. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and it really works.
It really does. Yeah, I'm trying to blend I'm trying to blur the line. Sorry, in terms of, I don't know sometimes whether I know which content performs well from an engagement perspective, and it's always
Working from home.
I did one today, to be fair. I know it does. The thing is, I know it does, and I'm reluctant sometimes to do it because I know that people are gonna, people already comment like, "Is this?" I can't remember what someone said, but I don't know, they're disagreeing to an extent, and also it's the payment side of things for subbies. Yeah. I know that's going to do well, but I'm like, do I continue to post it even though I posted it? I just kind of word it a bit different, and I'm like, shall I keep posting this? I know it does engagement. Am I now posting just for engagement, or am I actually adding value? I don't know.
There is that.
It's difficult.
There's that balance.
Yes, it is, and I'm trying to do more value-driven posts this year. But I'm big on personal branding, and it's nice to hear that you are as well, because not many people doing it.
No, and I think particularly in the construction space, it's few and far between. I think an element of it as well is like, and this is part of the reason why I wouldn't do it in the first place, is it is cringy. It is like people. I meet people all the time, and they'll be like, "Oh, I see you on LinkedIn, you post on LinkedIn." I just inside, I'm like, "Oh, so cringy."
Dying inside.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, but I do it for the business. It's not if I can, on which I feel I have, if I can create exposure for the business that wasn't originally there, then that's a good thing. I just need to make sure that I'm creating the right sort of exposure, and not just.
And the touch points are infinite at the end of the day, because you could do a post that's got 250,000 impressions, and you don't know who that post has reached. You don't know if once that post has reached a specific person, whether they're talking to other people about the post as well. And it's almost infinite impressions that you can get off the back of a post. Yeah,
well, I mean, you go to a how many people can you? If you go to a traditional marketing event now, which they have their place and they have value, because having a real conversation with people has its value. But how many people can you reach? And then how many people can you reach by putting a post out that adds value?
Yeah.
They're infinitely different.
It's true.
And people, I think, the old traditional approach of business development, people wanted to talk and speak to people and build that relationship first. I don't think people are as interested in that now. They want to know what service you're selling, and they'll tell you whether they need it or whether they don't, or maybe they need it in the future.
And what do you do realistically at a networking event with a business card? Put it in the bin. I know it sounds really horrible, but you do.
Yeah, I mean, with the only stuff we do face to face is targeted events in the care space where we know all the key players are there, and there are lots of people we already know anyway, and they're more social. Yeah. But in terms of reaching out to people that you don't know, there's no more effective way to do it than LinkedIn.
No, I agree with you. Something that I wanted to discuss as well, I know we had a bit of conversation over Teams about it, but some advice that you would potentially give subcontractors who are burning through not being paid, and that their businesses are starting to fail as such, and they're going under, and they don't really know what to do or how to approach it. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think it's I don't speak for the whole main contracting market, but it's probably good to set this out in the sense of what's a main contractor looking for in a subcontractor.
Yeah, that's good.
What makes a good subcontractor. For us, we are looking for companies where we get a feel and a sense that they do understand their numbers, because we know that it's not going to go wrong. It's in our interests that subcontractors are robust commercially. We don't want subcontractors going bust on our jobs. It's not in our interest, and we don't want to be able to be in a position where we can take advantage of them. It's just not what we're interested in. So companies that know their numbers. In terms of like where I think the supply chain make mistakes is not building relationships. So, you need to. We've got key relationships with our supply chain. I think I mentioned it earlier. We've got about 200 supply chain members, split over sort of 40 trades. We also have what we call our key supply chain packages. So, they're the most critical packages. What we feel the most critical packages are on our jobs. I'm not going to say who they are. And make them feel special. M&E's one of them. Yeah, I'll just give M&E away. You're going to get
flooded with M&E messages.
But within every supply chain member that we've got within those key trade packages, one of the directors has a personal relationship with the director / owner of that subcontract business.
Which I suppose separates you probably with a lot of main contractors, because subcontractors might be dealing with a site manager or project manager as such, who has no, like they don't have any skin in the game in the company they're working for. They're not a director, they're not a shareholder.
I mean, I say they've got contact. If we're involved, there's probably a problem. They are dealing with the team, but if there is a problem, we can pick the phone up and say, look, we need your help. Or vice versa. They can pick the phone up to us and say, look, we need your help. This isn't working, and it works well having that relationship. We've got that touch point with our. I think the key is like you said, the business owners and directors have got that touch point with their key supply chain members. And actually, I know some pretty big tier 1 contractors that have that model as well. And I think that's a successful model, not just for main contractors but for subcontractors as well. They need to be able to pick up the phone and say, look, is this job looking like it's coming our way? In the first instance, they need to know that they're pricing work with a chance to win it, because I think there's a lot of the supply chain out there that just blindly price work, and they'll only ever win that work if they're cheap. And we do say that to we will give people the opportunity to price in certain instances, but we will be open with them and say, look, we've got two other people pricing this that we trust, so to win this, you are going to have to be cheaper than them. And we would have pre-qualified them in a certain sense and felt that they're right for the business, but we're not going to give them work over our supply chain, like our approved supply chain members, unless they're cheaper in that first instance. So if you're just blindly pricing work, you're going to have to be cheap. And do you want to be cheap? So why don't you build relationships with the main contractor in the first instance? I always say it to our pre-construction teams, like, if people want to come in and meet us, they owe them the time. If they're going to price the work for us, they owe them the time to meet them. And I actually feel you get a really good sense. It's like a relationship. You get a good sense of whether you're going to get on with someone, whether it's going to work by meeting them. You don't get that sense from them just sending a quote. I mean, subbies might be pricing work for people that they then go and meet and think, I'd never want to work for them. They're extremely difficult, or I don't know, their goals may not be aligned in whatever way that is. But blindly pricing work is a complete waste of time. Make sure you build relationships with people is what I'd say. Make sure you've at least got a chance of winning work. And then understanding your commercials is a big one for us, and just real simple. Just do what you say you're going to do. I think that applies to all business, individuals, employees. Whatever you say you're going to do, just do your best to try and deliver it. That's where we fall out with subcontractors, when they say they're going to do one thing and they do another. Problems can be managed if everyone's transparent about what the problems are. If you just get told that things are going to be a certain way, and then that doesn't end up being the case, it makes it more difficult to manage. So I'd say those are the sort of 3 points. 3 main things. Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's lots of. I think what you were touching on was there's lots of they get lots of engagement. The posts on LinkedIn about non-payment. I'm really careful about how I say it on LinkedIn, because non-payment's a massive issue, and it can destroy businesses. Like it's serious. It's not a trivial issue, and sometimes when you write things on LinkedIn, it doesn't come across how you mean it. But the subcontract supply chain, if I could give them one bit of advice, I actually was speaking to someone, I know we spoke about this yesterday, I was speaking to another subcontractor about it. If I could give them one bit of advice, it'd be to make sure that they get credit insurance on main contractors they're working for. It's almost the cost of doing business as a subcontractor. You have to go into the subcontract world, construction world, with your eyes wide open, and your principal risk as a subcontractor is non-payment. Contractor going bust, whatever it may be, and you need to do whatever you can to try and reduce that risk. And the simplest way that I can see is credit insurance. And the subcontractor I was speaking to the other day, they do about £20 million worth of construction work, and they pay less than 0.5% of their turnover to get credit insurance on the main contractors and clients that they're working for. And actually what the credit insurers do, I think people like Allianz and stuff do it, what they also do for you is they'll tell you who they won't give credit insurance to.
Interesting.
It almost becomes like it's like a free, well, it's not free because you're paying for it, but it's a credit checking facility.
Yeah.
If these brokers, sureties, are going to tell you, look, we're not insuring these guys,
let's not work with them.
Kind of tells you everything you need to know, isn't it? Or you adjust your payment terms, you take a view on it. If we can get 14-day terms, you probably won't, because they ain't got any money if they've got bad credit, if they've got bad if your credit insurance, if you're not getting credit insurance, they're probably not in a great financial position. But that would be my number one bit of advice: get credit insurance. Don't sign PGs. Make sure that you limit your risk to having a limited company. I see lots of people on there that...
Didn't you sign a PG?
Steve signed it, to be fair. I didn't. A PG in my name at that point in time was completely worthless. It wasn't worth it. I probably should have signed it, actually. It didn't have any value.
But it's just risk management, isn't it?
It's risk management, but you see these people in terrible situations where they're like, they've lost everything, and you're like,
that's really sad.
Don't put everything on the line. Like no one should ever do that. It's a bit of advice. There's limited companies are limited companies for a reason. If you're going to sign PGs, you may as well just operate as a sole trader. So yeah, don't sign any guarantees, and try your best to get credit insurance. As far as I understand, I'm not an expert in it, but it's pretty readily available at a reasonable cost. And I just see that as if I was going to run a subcontract business, that's the first thing I'd do: go and get credit insurance. And the subcontractors that we use in our supply chain, as soon as they say we've got credit insurance, it just immediately gives me comfort that these guys commercially, risk management, they're on it, and we like that as a business.
Interesting. How about the future for Kori? So you guys have grown drastically since you've been there, and I'm sure there's other people that deserve credit for that as well. Yeah. So you guys went from 2 or 3 million. You're now operating at 68. Did you say?
Yeah, 60. Well, yeah. So our financial year's coming to an end. What's the date now?
It is the 27th of March.
Yeah, so we've got 3 more days left or whatever. That's the end of our financial year. So yeah, we'll be 68 million this year. We were 54 million the year before that. 36 the year before that.
Just massive growth.
20. Yeah, about 50% year on year.
Is that just carrying out bigger projects and then just trying to...
Bigger schemes. Yeah. To be fair, an element of that was inflation. Yep. The first care home scheme we built was 4.5 million. On average now they're 10, 15 million. Yep. So yeah, it increased value of projects, and then also increasing the volume. So where do you think you're going to get to? Because you've grown rapidly every single year. Yeah, realistically, we might take a little bit of a dip in turnover next year. There's going to be like a sort of 2-3 month gap between some schemes. To be honest, I've got no interest in driving turnover at any cost. It's all about profitability for us, and we've driven profitable growth. Within those 10 years, we haven't had a year where we've lost money. And last year was our most profitable year, and this year will be our most profitable year. So it's all about increasing margin. Yep. If we need to go back down to being a £20 million contractor because it makes sense from a net margin point of view, we will. I can't see a situation where that would happen. But if that was where the margin was, I've got no interest in driving turnover.
It's ego, isn't it? The ones that
people say it. I don't know, because I'm not in those businesses. What I do see is, I see businesses that turning over hundreds of millions and making less than 1% net margin. And on the face of it, looking at the numbers, I'm not in the business. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what people are paying themselves. Numbers are only part of the story. On paper, it doesn't make any sense to me. But
What's the
look,
point?
I'm not gonna profess that I'm sort of smart enough to run a business of that size. I haven't done it, so I'm sure they've got their own reasons. Maybe it is ego. I don't know. I just don't see any sense in it. So it's certainly it's not the trajectory that we're trying to follow. I think organically we're going to get to about 100 million turnover in the next couple of years.
Yep.
We are, because where we've positioned ourselves in the market, we're sort of getting we're getting put forward for more complex schemes. Slightly larger schemes in terms of value.
Yep.
So we want to keep the business at sort of 10 to 12 projects at any one time. I just think those project values will creep up. And look, we don't have like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan.
Just organic growth, and
the plan is to just keep making
stay profitable,
good margins. Yeah,
carry out good work.
Yeah, so I think part of the success of the business has been, there is a competitive streak in the business, and certainly in me. And for me, I'm not that interested in the money. It's just the competitive pursuit of being a contractor of our size.
Yeah.
That's making a better net percentage margin than others. That's kind of what we're. I guess it's that competitive side that drives us. Certainly drives me.
Yeah.
We want to be the best contractor of our size. That's in our space. Really, that's what we want to be. And an element of that comes down to ultimately businesses are there to make money, aren't they? So if you're making really good net margins, you're up there with the best of them, which is where we want to be.
What about plans for you? Because how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
How old?
Yeah.
36.
So you're obviously quite young in terms of your career and in terms of where you are. Like, what's the plans for yourself? Because you got many years left.
I've got a lot of years. I don't know. I sort of flip between thinking, I don't know if I can do this for another week. And then...
It's a roller coaster, isn't it? Really is.
And then I sort of have periods where, I really enjoy it. I don't see a time where I won't be working. I'm working more. We've got a construction business. Started a development business last year. Working with we've got someone heading up that business, George. So we're offering sort of turnkey solutions in the care space. It's all fairly new, but we've got 2 sites that we've got under our control now. So I'm spending a lot of time on the development business, which is all quite new. Find that quite interesting. It's sort of similar in senses, but new in other ways. So spending a lot of time there. I just think I'll just keep on keeping on. I think.
Mate, you've done incredibly well. To you're only 36. You're still really super young, and you've helped grow the company from what was a small contractor to one of the larger main contractors in your space, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So you've done incredibly well, mate.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it wasn't just. See, this is the thing. I'm like the face of the business, but there is a lot of very
key
important people behind me that that are part of that growth. All our staff, to be honest. We say this. It's actually one of our sort of taglines, driven by ambition. And I think everyone's within our business. Their individual ambition collated together has created what we've got as a business. It's not just me. I just sort of drive the strategy and where I think we should go, and set people on the path of this is what I think we should focus on. And I'm sort of I do the strategy, and other people actually make it happen. I don't do much of the making it happen stuff. So
there's probably loads of people to thank, but ultimately as well, the buck stops with you. So when it goes wrong, I assume it comes. The buck stops with you. And
I mean, I try and pass it down the chain as much as I can, but
you have to bear the weight, didn't you, on your shoulders? So give yourself some credit, mate. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Thanks.
No worries. Jordan, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing a main contractor's perspective.
No worries.
Because it's easy to get dived into the world of the subbies and back in the subbies, and there's a lot of blame that gets put on the main contractors. So it's interesting to hear your standpoint from a main contractor perspective. And mimicking myself, you've done incredibly well to help grow the company, I should say, rather than say you, because you'll start telling me it's other people. And I don't doubt you'll reach your targets as well, mate. So thanks so much for coming on.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Cheers,
thanks for having me. Cheers.